Battle Dress by Amy Efaw, Chapter 11, Thursday, 5th August, 0045. Simulated bombs screeched through the air and white lights flashed, then hovered like spotlights over the woods we'd soon enter. We should have been snuggled inside our sleeping bags, but instead, we sat shivering on metal bleachers and watching the starless sky spit drizzle, the water beating on our ponchos and rolling off. With camouflage faces and vacant stares, we looked like veteran troops as we waited out the minutes until it was 3rd Squad's time to go out into our first night patrol. Finally, Cadet Daly stood up. He tossed Zero a roll of green duct tape. "Pass that around, Zero. Tape everything metal. 3rd Squad flashlights, M16 straps, LCE suspenders, and anything else that makes noise, including your mouths if necessary." He tossed a wad of olive green cord to Ping. "That is what we call dummy cord, 3rd Squad, invented especially for knuckleheads like you. Go ahead, combat. Help them tie their weapons to their bodies. Leave only about 3 feet of slack max. I don't want to spend the next few hours of rack time we'll have left tonight beating the bushes for an M16 that was lost in the dark. Now get hot, we're moving out in a few." After Cadet Daly had inspected our tape and tie jobs, he formed us into a single file line with Kit in the front and Ping in the rear. "Remember, 3rd Squad," Cadet Daly said, "this is a tactical patrol. As soon as we move out, noise and light discipline will be enforced. That means no talking and no flashlights. Tonight, realism is the name of the game. You got that?" "Yes, sir!" "I'll be on point, and Ping, you'll bring up the rear. Remember, no crowding. Keep your intervals. About 2 paces between men." He pointed at the 2 fluorescent squares on the back of Kit's helmet. "Keep the cat eyes on the back of the helmet in front of you, in sights at all times, 3rd Squad, and you'll be good to go. I won't tolerate any weak excuses from anyone who wanders off. Understand?" "Yes, sir!" "Now for all the noise out here. When you hear a whistle and seconds later an explosion, that's incoming. You hit the dirt. When you hear a pop and seconds later you see bright light flooding an area, that's an illumination flare. You freeze. This ain't rocket science, 3rd Squad. Just use your heads. Stay alert, stay alive. That's what it's all about. Now let's move out." We followed Cadet Daly into the woods, peering into the blackness, silent as snakes. The rain had softened the earth, muffling our movement. Even after my eyes adjusted to the dark, I could barely make out the shapes of the trees enclosing us. I held my weapon out in front and pointed it toward the trees, watching for any sudden movement. Years of running cross-country had taught me to make split-second decisions about footing. But now, unable to see the ground, I chose each step carefully, feeling with the toes of my boots for rocks or tree roots, anything that could trip me up, and I watched the cat eyes piercing the darkness from the back of Hickman's Kevlar, moving directly in front of me. My imagination quickly took over. I was creeping through the jungles of Vietnam, or the forests of Eastern Europe. The enemy was out there, waiting, watching. Maybe somewhere someone had found a round chambered in his weapon that was destined to rip through my body, ending everything in a second. I felt my pulse speed up, but I wasn't afraid. I concentrated on keeping my breathing quiet, my footsteps soundless. I was ready for anything. A whistle screamed overhead. "Incoming!" The explosion crashed as we dove for the dirt. Then we silently got to our feet and moved on, only to hug the muddy ground again and again. Just after we started down a long hill, a new shrieking sound came from behind me and shattered the silence. "My knee! My knee! Oh, my knee!" Gabrielle. Cadet Daly appeared instantly. "What's going on?" he hissed in a voice that only barely passed for a whisper. He crouched beside Gabrielle, who was now a crumpled, moaning heap, rocking back and forth in the mud and clutching her knee. "Brian?" "Sir, I tripped. My knee." She made a move to stand, but only ended up crying out again. "Something's broken, sir. I just know it. It hurts so bad." Ping had slipped up the line and was kneeling beside Gabrielle, his hands already examining her knee. I stood beside them, wishing I could do something to help. Poor Gab. "Keep it down, Brian." Cadet Daly leaned closer to Gabrielle. "You gotta suffer silently, understand? You're gonna compromise our position." The rest of 3rd Squad pressed closer, trying to get a look at our first real casualty. Ping tapped Cadet Daly on the shoulder and whispered into his ear. I strained my ears to hear Ping's words over Gabrielle's whimpering. "Knees intact, sir. Nothing's broken. Badly bruised." "Badly bruised?" I stared at Gabrielle, confused. "That's it?" Cadet Daly turned back to Gabrielle. "Listen to me, Brian. You gotta suck it up, understand? You are jeopardizing the safety of every member in the squad. In combat, soldiers are shot, and they don't make a sound." "Yeah," I heard Hickman whisper behind me, and all she did was fall down. Give me a break. The darkness could hide the disgust on Hickman's face, but not in his voice. I chewed on my lip. I couldn't completely disagree with him. Why couldn't Gabrielle just stop blubbering? A wave of irritation surged up inside me. Doesn't she have any pride? I stepped away from her and moved closer to Hickman, hoping the subtle gesture would distance me from Gabrielle in the eyes of the squad. I wanted to show them I was disgusted by her unmilitary reaction, too. Immediately, I felt guilty, disloyal. Gabrielle was my roommate, my friend. I heard a pop overhead, and instantly we were blanketed with white light. Nobody moved until the light melted into the dark. "The enemy knows our location," Cadet Daly said. "We've got to move. Now." In that instant, I understood. Gabrielle had been wrong. Pain or no pain. She should have been quiet. She should have kept it in. This was about something bigger than loyalty or friendships. This was about life and death. I saw Ping help Gabrielle to her feet. "Just lean on me, Gab," I heard him whisper. "You'll be okay." But still, shouldn't I have done something? I moved aside to let them pass ahead of me, and as I followed behind third squad in the dark, one thought plagued me. Gabrielle was hurt, and I had deserted her. 0525. Sounds faded in and out around me, muffled and murky at first, as if I were floating in a pool of water just below its surface. Then gradually the sounds became louder, sharper. People talking, the snaps of tent flaps popping open, sleeping bags unzipping, equipment clinking. I slowly became aware of the hard ground under my body and the musty fabric of my sleeping bag. My body was warm, but my nose was cold. Something moved against me, then groaned. I opened my eyes. Light filtered through the canvas of the tent that enclosed Gabrielle and me like two larvae in a canvas cocoon. Morning already? I rolled over and squinted at my watch. 5:27. Then closed my eyes again. It was already morning when we had went to bed last night. My limbs felt heavy, tired, like they had been injected with some kind of drug. Gotta get up. Need to get dressed. Before Daly gets here. And I slipped back into the no man's land between wakefulness and sleep. "Rise and shine, maggots! It's a good morning to die!" The tent shook and my eyes snapped open. Cadet Daly. We both shot up into a seated position of attention, our legs still bound by our sleeping bags. "I want verbal confirmation that you're conscious, Brian. Davis, you up?" "Yes, sir." "Good. You got exactly 22 minutes to police up yourselves and your area before reveille. I was generous, ladies. I gave you 7 extra minutes of La La Land because of our late night. Don't make me regret it." "Yes, sir." "How's that knee, Brian?" "Fine, sir. I'll check it before we move out to training." He moved away, and I heard him repeat his morning greeting to Kit and Jason next door. "Rise and shine, maggots! It's a good morning to die." A good morning to die. And then, with a jolt in my gut, I remembered. We're getting gassed today. We're going to practice what it felt like to die. Gabrielle sank back into her sleeping bag and moaned. 3.5 hours of sleep. They'd never think of letting us sleep in for once. "Hey, Cadet Daly gave us 7 extra minutes, Gab." Gabrielle snorted and covered her head with her sleeping bag. I fumbled with the zipper of my sleeping bag with shaky hands, swollen from lack of sleep. Then I untangled the sling of my M16 from around my leg and laid the weapon, warm from my body, on the ground between Gabrielle and me. "Okay, I've got to find my glasses. No contacts allowed today," Cadet Daly said. I started feeling around my side of the tent for my glasses. "All right, where are they?" "Come on, Gab." I prodded the mound inside the sleeping bag beside me with my foot. "Get up." Okay, I'm moving." She squirmed out of her sleeping bag and looked at me. "Your boyfriend drooled on you last night?" she asked, pointing at my left thigh. "What?" I leaned over to inspect it. My nose had just about touched my thigh before I saw what she was pointing at. "Oh, this?" I licked my thumb and tried rubbing the grimy streak off my thigh. I guess I didn't wipe off my M16 good enough when we got back last night. It was really muddy out there, huh? Gabrielle didn't answer. I sensed that she didn't want to talk about last night. I could understand that. I wasn't so sure last night had been one of my better moments either. I worked quickly to fill in the silence. "I'll tell you what," I nodded toward my M16. "I'm really sick of sleeping with this thing." "No complaints, Andy. You know what Cadet Daly says. It's the only boyfriend you've got right now." Every night that we'd been out here, Cadet Daly had reminded us to guard our weapons well. "You don't have a girlfriend anymore," he'd say, "'cause Jody's got her." Then he'd smirk at Gabrielle and me. "And you ain't got no boyfriend either. So third squad, when you go to bed tonight, cuddle your M16 and consider yourselves lucky." The subject always bothered me. It made me feel both uncomfortable and inadequate. But I didn't want Cadet Daly thinking that I'd sleep with a boyfriend, even if I had one. And I didn't want him broadcasting the fact that I was a female. I'd rather have him and the rest of the squad think of me as just another one of the guys. I nodded, then pulled socks out of my ruck and wormed my feet into them. The tent was silent once again. Suffocatingly silent. I knew we'd have to talk about last night eventually. Last night wasn't going to leave on its own. I took a deep breath and plunged right in. "So, Gab, how's your knee this morning? Really?" Gabrielle tugged at a string on her sleeping bag and shrugged. "It looked bad last night." I waited for her to say something. She continued to groom her sleeping bag. "Is it still swollen?" "Does it look swollen?" She snapped back. I'd said the wrong thing, and now I had to fix it. "I can't tell, Gab. I took out my contacts last night, so everything looks swollen." I laughed, hoping she'd laugh too, but she didn't. "Are you going to see the medics today, or—" "I'm not going on profile if that's what you're getting at, so don't get your hopes up, Super Troop." "My hopes up? Super Troop?" I watched her bend her knee up then down. What did she mean by that? Did she really think I was glad that she got hurt? Or was she insinuating something else? This wasn't like Gabrielle. She always said exactly what was on her mind. But wasn't she right? Wouldn't the whole incident, Gabrielle's accident, and her yelling actually end up benefiting me in a twisted sort of way? Didn't it make me look that much better, more hoo-ah in comparison? And wasn't that what I wanted all along? To have the guys think of me as one of them and not some wimpy female in disguise? I felt miserable. These thoughts were taking me to a place I didn't want to go, shaping me into the kind of friend that I'd never want to be. Besides, Gabrielle was saying, Ping said he'd look at my knee before breakfast, and he's better than any worthless company medic anyway. Then she looked at me and sighed. I guess I made a real idiot out of myself last night, huh? I didn't exactly know how to answer that question. I had been both embarrassed for her and angry at her last night. And rightly so. If we'd really been out in combat, Third Squad could have gotten wiped out because of her. But I couldn't tell her that. She was my friend, and I didn't want to make her feel bad. Well, I stammered, you were hurt, and well, it's over now, and it was only practice. You wouldn't have yelled. I didn't like the way she said that, accusingly. And I didn't like the way she was looking at me, studying me. It made me nervous. I needed something to do. I got on my hands and knees and felt down the length of my sleeping bag, searching for a lump that might be my glasses. That's not necessarily true. I mean, if I were really hurt, my knee got bruised, Andy. Not broken, not blown out, not anything. Just bruised. She crawled over to her ruck at the foot of our tent, and everybody knows it. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt, Gab. Sometimes bruises hurt more than breaks. There, that was a true statement, one that I hoped would make her feel better. After all, I had twisted ankles and shin splints that had kept me from running before. Whatever. She dug into her ruck, her back toward me. I almost wish I were debilitated for life. At least then I'd be justified a little for last night. One of her hands left her ruck and moved up to her face. After all I did was fall down. I closed my eyes, so she heard Hickman. Gab, let's just drop it, okay? Okay. The silence was so strong now that it seemed to be squeezing the musty air between us. I cleared my throat. Hey, are my glasses on your side? I can't find them. Correction, Andy. You mean tactical eye devices, right? She wiped her face on her t-shirt. What for? Because I need them to see, Gab. Why else? I laughed nervously, grateful to be talking about something else. Come on, do you see them? I'm totally blind. But you wear contacts, so what's the big deal? She pulled out her BDU pants and crawled back into her sleeping bag. You didn't lose a contact, did you? No. Well, that's a relief. She lay down on her back and started wiggling into her pants. Gab, we're not supposed to wear contacts today. Remember? 'Cause we're getting gassed? My stomach twitched thinking about the day ahead of us. Don't think about that now. I pulled out my BDU pants and lay down on my sleeping bag next to her. Remember what Cadet Daly said? Tear gas and contacts don't mix. Well, I'm wearing mine anyway. The gas can't be that bad. She jammed her brown t-shirt into her pants. Plus, I think it's stupid that we can't wear our civilian glasses. I mean, what's the big deal? She jabbed me with her elbows as she worked on the buttons of her fly. Wearing Ted's is just another big haze. Well, I guess it's because they want us all to look the same and tactical eye devices. What's so tactical about them anyway? They're ugly. She sat up and started weaving her BDU belt through her belt loops. Around here, tactical and ugly seem to be synonymous. If you want to be hoo-ah, you gotta look gross. It should be a cadence. She stabbed the end of her belt through the buckle like she was thrusting her bayonet into the enemy. No way am I gonna wear Ted's in public. And neither should you, Andy. Who's gonna know if you wear contacts or if you don't? Don't be such a duty dog. She pulled her brush out of her ruck and ran it through her hair. I may be a wimp, but at least I won't be an ugly one. I glanced at Gabrielle and chewed on the inside of my lip. I'd said something wrong again. I just wanted to do the right thing and stay out of trouble. I wasn't a risk taker like Gabrielle. She was always testing the boundaries here, talking at unauthorized times, sneaking food back from the mess hall under her hat, chewing the sticks of gum her friends enclosed in her letters, wearing the faintest shade of lipstick to dinner when no makeup was allowed, and now blowing off Cadet Daly's instructions to not wear contacts. Maybe my need to play by the rules was what was annoying her. I sat up and pulled my ruck onto my lap. I've sure started some winter conversations this morning. Ted's aren't that bad, I said, trying to turn the focus off of me. Kit wears them and he looks okay. Kit's a guy, Andy. She pulled out fresh socks and jammed her feet into them. The Army didn't have femininity or style in mind, believe me, when they created Ted's. She pulled the drawstrings on her ruck. So, you dressed? I'm going to open the flaps. It smells like mothballs in here. Gabrielle was right. The Army-issue glasses were ugly. Even more ugly, if it were possible, than our low quarters. The only people whom I had ever seen wear glasses so hideous in the real world were geeks in the movies and my dad. Ted's. What a perfect name. Not only would my dad have paid money for the thick brown plastic frames, but he shared the name, Ted. Just then, thinking of my dad wearing his way out of style glasses almost made me feel sorry for him. It suddenly struck me how pathetically out of touch he really was. Maybe he was just incapable of understanding that things like encouraging letters or having a bedroom to come home to might be important to me. I mean, anyone who would walk into LensCrafters and actually choose that style of glasses out of so many? I sighed. Okay, Gab, you win. Ted's are ugly. But Gabrielle wasn't listening. She was staring at the snap tent flaps, thinking. You know, Andy, I can't believe I never thought about it before, but if you put Kit in a pair of tiny wireframe glasses, dark brown with a touch of gold maybe, he'd be a pretty cute guy. You know, the intellectual type. She smiled at herself as she ripped open the flaps and stumbled outside. Cooler air and light flooded into our tent. The grass is dry, Andy. You'll never guess we spent half the night in the rain. I tossed my ruck, boots, and canteen outside the tent before crawling out myself. Then I sat down beside Gabrielle just outside the opening of our tent to pull on my boots. Howdy, neighbors, and how are you on this fine morning? I squinted in the direction of the voice. Two blurs were sitting in front of Kit in Jason's tent next door. Awake, Gabrielle answered without looking up, quickly twisting her hair into a bun. Glad you're off to a good start, Kit said. How's the knee? It still works. Hoping to come up with something other than Gabrielle's knee to talk about, I put my other foot into its boot and found the new topic in the bottom. My Teds! I yelled, exaggerating my surprise, and nudged Gabrielle. See, right where I'd be sure to find them. Mystery solved. I smiled at her, hoping she'd smile back and break the tension, but all she did was shrug, uninterested. I quickly stuck my Teds on my face and looked back at Kit and Jason, now in focus, sitting cross-legged and dressed like us in brown t-shirts and BDU pants. Hey guys, nice to see you. Kit and Jason had shaving cream smeared on their faces and a canteen cup on the ground between them. Kit dipped his razor into the cup and felt around his face with his fingertips. I didn't know you wore glasses, Andy. Interesting. That bad, huh? I grabbed my toothbrush out of my ruck and squeezed toothpaste on the bristles. That's an understatement. Gabrielle watched me as I brushed my teeth. Try using water. You'll never get the scum off your teeth brushing dry. I smiled at Gabrielle, my mouth full of foam. Thanks, Mom. I didn't say you looked bad, Andy, Kit said. Of course not, Gabrielle muttered. She never looks bad. Now what? Her snide remarks were really starting to worry me. She seemed to resent my very presence. And since we'd left the tent, it was getting worse. Every single thing I said or did just brought another jab. I stopped brushing and stared at Gabrielle. Okay, just don't let it get to you. She was having a bad day because she had a bad night. But she'd get over it, eventually. I just have to write it out. I said interesting, Kit was saying. And anyway, from what Cadet Daly said yesterday, it won't matter what we look like after we hit the gas tent. Yeah, Jason said. In a couple of hours, we're going to be slobbering all over ourselves and twitching like roaches that got hit with a raid. He limped over to his tent. Everyone will be nasty with a capital N. Thanks for the graphic description, Gabrielle said. Kit grinned. Teds will just add to the charm. I spit around the corner of my tent and rinsed my mouth with the water from a canteen. Gabrielle stared at the toothpaste foam on the ground. I guess we know which side of the tent you're tightening. I ignored Gabrielle and went back to lacing my boots. How are your feet, Jason? They're okay. They only hurt when I first put my boots on. He suddenly got a strange smile on his face, then ducked into his tent before hobbling over to us. Gab, you act like you rolled out of the wrong side of the rack this morning, so I have a little something for you to, cheer you up. Gabrielle smiled up at him. You do? Sure. He scooped something out of his pocket and sprinkled it into her open hand. Gabrielle looked down and screamed, flinging Jason's gift on the ground. Toenails! Nasty, bloody, disgusting toenails! You are such a child! She scowled back at Jason, who was laughing and returning Kit's high five. How old are you guys anyway? 10? She poured water on her hands. Why didn't you do that to Andy? Oh wait, let me guess. It's let's pick on Gab day today, right? Jason shrugged. Andy wouldn't have screamed Gab. She's, too tough for that. He got a sick look on his face, then realizing too late what he had said. Sorry, Gab, I didn't mean about, Gabrielle's face froze. Mine burned. Any other time his compliment would have made my day, but right now it was probably the worst thing he could have said. And I didn't want praise this way, not at Gabrielle's expense. And right then I made up my mind. The next time praise came my way, I'd be standing on my own merit, not on someone else's misfortune. Let's move, third squad! I heard Cadet Daly yell as he stomped toward us. Tighten down those tents. Get into the proper uniform. Come on, you ain't in the ragbag brigade. Let's go. Revelie's in 2 minutes, and you're behind the power curve. We jumped to our feet and scrambled in different directions, throwing bodies into BDU shirts, grabbing weapons, hammering tent pegs, strapping on gas mask pouches, and covering our heads with BDU caps. All the discomfort of the moment was forgotten.